Hello, everybody. Welcome into another Tide and Tiger podcast. Scott Griffin here. We appreciate all the response so far. It's been great on Tide and Tigers. We talked to different analysts like Rodney Orr and Kevin Skarbinski, and, of course, we'll visit with coaches and plenty of people as well talking about Alabama and Auburn. Today, we visit with Jimbo Fisher. He'll be staring across that sideline from the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and Nick Saban, his former mentor. You remember Jimbo Fisher was at LSU from 2000 to 2006. And the thing I remember about it is he got along so well with Nick Saban there, and they had such great success winning a national championship. You never saw that Saban chewing on the offensive coordinator's rear end. I don't recall that. I mean, he did it with Doug Nussmeier, a little bit with Jim McElwain, certainly did it with Lane Kiffin, obviously, but I don't remember that happening a lot when Jimbo Fisher was his coordinator. Maybe it's because they're so much alike. Certainly there's a lot of Saban DNA in Florida State's head coach, but there's also a lot of Bowden DNA, and we'll talk to Jimbo Fisher about those things. Fisher, of course, succeeded a legend. Think about the difficulty in that. And he led Florida State to a 10-4 record during his first season, which was, by the way, Florida State's first 10-win season since 2003. Long time there. And their first appearance in the ACC championship game since 2005. Then in 2012 is when he really hit his stride. The Seminoles 12-2. They win the Orange Bowl. Then they go 14-0. BCS National Championship for the 2013 year. They go on a 29-game win streak, finally lose to Oregon in the Rose Bowl, finished that year 13-1. So combined now, after last 2 years of 10-3, Jimbo Fisher is now 78-17. 78-17 in just 7 years. Obviously, that's 11 wins a year and a national title. You think that spells Nick Saban's success written all over him? You better believe it. And he talks about learning from Nick Saban and his program. So let's get into the interview. Just a few days ago, my conversation with Florida State head coach Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo, how are you, sir?
Doing great, Scott. How you doing?
You're not busy now, are you?
Not
You're not doing anything. You're a little bit? Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. I got a lot of ways to go, but as I told you, I talked to Terry Bowden recently. Mm-hmm. And, everybody wants to say Jimbo's a Saban guy. And I always say, well, he's got some Bowden in him too. Yeah. And I was intrigued, and Terry had a good take on that. But give me your take, because we want to label you. You can't just be Jimbo Fisher. We got to see what DNA you've got in your coaching stuff. So what's your opinion on that?
Well, I think there's three things that really lay into my DNA. First of all, my parents, my mom, my dad, and the leadership and the things they did, and I learned from them, which was the most of anybody. But when I got around the Bowden family and Coach Bowden, the way he did things, and Terry, how meticulous, how intelligent. Terry was a very meticulous and intelligent guy who could really coach, and still was doing a great job. But, learning how to the game itself and the big picture of the game, how to treat people, how you think of things, the culture in which you wanted to create, the way things were, and how it evolved, and how Coach Bowden could adapt to so many different situations of recruiting, and then the ball itself, just being around him and being around that Bowden family early in the offensive football that I learned was tremendous. And then I got around Nick, and then the whole encompassing the whole program, just the culture in which he created and the organization and the CEO type things. And I think is you take things from everybody and then you incorporate them into your own thoughts and become your own guy.
And that if we were playing a match game, the bell would go off. Here's what Terry said. Just I'm sure you're curious. Jimbo is all Bowden as a play caller. Thinks of himself as a Saban head coach in today's market. Much smarter to align yourself as a Saban guy. That accurate?
Yeah, I mean, it is. And the play call, trying to be aggressive, trying to create matchups, the way Coach Bowden tried to do it. And then, but I think the culture of the game has changed and how you have to do things. And I think that would be that'd probably be very accurate.
All right, so and we're going to talk about the game and your team too, but we obviously talk about these things as well. What is Brian Dable going through as a coordinator with Nick right now? You think? I mean, from your perspective.
Well, I think the thing about Nick is in that, which I always tried to put myself in, and I always did it as an offensive coordinator, which I thought was, people say I was always crazy, but what do we have to have the ingredients in this offense to have to win games throughout the year? To not just win this game or win that game, but to be all-encompassing and be able to, some teams you're going to have to be physical and run it. Other teams you're going to have to spread it and throw it. Other games, we got to be able to execute on third down and throw the ball down the field. And when people know you're going to pass, you got to be able to throw the football. You got to understand how to protect. But you got to be diverse and create enough trick plays and, different formations to cause problems. And then, not get caught up in leading the nation in offense and points. If you have to, you have to. And that was one of the things, what does our team need to win? And I think just being all-encompassing across the board, and I think that the different variations you have to do to be successful in the game. Because the ultimate thing is not to lead it in offense, not to lead it in defense, but to lead it and win.
So is the hardest thing just the hours and the grind? I know you appreciate that, and that's what makes you unique too. But is that the hardest thing? And then what's the easiest thing that we might misinterpret about being under a guy like that?
Well, I don't think the grind there is any different. I think as far as the hours, which again, I didn't mind them at all. That's kind of how I am too.
Right.
I mean, that way. But at the same time, it's what you get done in those hours, and you don't waste time. The organizational transition from this part to this part to this part to this part of the game plan, or whatever you have to get done, I think that's where Nick really is efficient, where he doesn't waste time. And every second of every day is very organized and structured, and which I think is is an efficient way to do things. And I think and he does grind in that way, but at the same time, it's what you have to do to be successful, because you got to find that 1 or 2 or 3% that separates you. And I think one of the things that people don't realize is he's hard and tough on coaches, but he's also very understanding. You do your job. By the time you think he's going to be rough on you, hey, this is a learning point. He'll come back and we'll sit down and we'll talk and do things. And the guy's a very intelligent guy. He knows how to handle people and manage people. And there's Nick on to me when he's not involved, it's work and like that, like a lot I am, I guess. But when you're away, Nick's a heck of a guy and a great guy to have conversation with and enjoy. He really is.
Yeah, and I mean, and he could be funny, as at times. I think the 2011 deal changed him. The tornado. You went through a life change a year or two ago. Has that changed you at all as a coach? Now, not in your personal life, obviously it has, but as a coach, has it changed you?
It really does. I mean, you understand that everybody you have is somebody's baby. But, man, I mean, there's so many more. I mean, we want to win. We want to grind. We want to be tough on these kids. But at the same time, they are kids. And at the end of the day, you got to make sure that you're understanding. And this thing it's still our job. It's not life and death and the things that are really going on in life, out there in the world. And It does put a different perspective.
Is Nick one of those guys, once you get away, you probably thought he was nuts when you're working under, but it's kind of like your dad. Your dad, you thought he was crazy when you were trying to borrow the car and do things. And then as you get older, it's like, wow, he was kind of smarter than I thought. Is that kind of the deal here? Oh,
no doubt. But Nick was a lot like my dad. That's why I never had a problem with it. It was what
you're used to it.
I think the culture where we came from in a weird way. I mean, it's just the way we grew up there. I think people there that appreciated Dave's work and did that. And my dad was very similar in a lot of ways. So it never really bothered me. And it's like anybody you get away from. Why would they do this? And all of a sudden a situation occurs later when you're a head coach or something goes on. So I understand why he did that now. You never question, but you always wonder, because you always think, I always put myself when situations occur, what would I do? Or if he does the same thing, okay, but maybe I could do this. Or I'm trying to understand why he did that and learn. But that's just the nature. I think you do that with everybody you're ever around.
Let's talk about the team. You put them through hell, you said, in spring. What did you read something in winter workouts that you thought, this is what I got to do? Or is it the first game, or the schedule's crazy? Well, what made you do that?
No, I think in your organization, I think sometimes you don't ever want to get placency to set in where things that you lose the edge. And that's one of the things we had here at Florida State, man. We always played hard. We played tough. We played physical. We played nasty. We played disciplined. And I think that was back when Coach Bowden's days and Mickey Andrews and those guys. And sometimes when you're in a program so long and you're having so much success, those little things can gradually slip. And you just start watching film. Beginning of last year, we let a couple things slip that I didn't think we should have. And, all right, that's my fault. I'm in charge of that. What can we do to fix it? And I made notes at that time. And I said, we're going to get back to some base things and just remind us and review the history of this program. When things weren't going as well at times, when we were down and what we do to get there, and remind these guys of that, and just trying to get that edge right back on you of how you play.
Did they respond like you wanted?
Without a doubt. I mean, it's a fun group to coach.
What makes them fun? Is it just that they're willing to work and you can push them and they don't mind, right?
When a young man or a team is willing to be coached, you love going to work with them. It's when you have to fight and scratch and claw, and this guy doesn't want to do it, and that guy doesn't. Or you got a couple guys, they doesn't, and your team takes ownership of it, and the leaders of the department say, "Listen, this is how we're going to do things around. You better get in or get out." And I think from that standpoint, they understand it, so it makes them fun to be around, and there's a chip and a hunger on them. Whether we play that way, I hope, but it's fun to coach them and be around them.
All right, let's talk about the offense. The wide receivers. I know you got talent. But are you comfortable with them right now? I know Francois made incredible strides under you last year, but what about the offensive line and the wide receivers? And we know Dalvin left, but you got backs, you got Cam Akers and talent there too.
Yeah, we do. I love our wide crew right now. I mean, we're still working. We're a work in progress. I love where we're going. We have size, we have speed, we have athleticism. Guys that can run the route tree. We have different things they can do, and they can get vertical and they have size. I feel very good there. Offensive line. I think we've had a good camp. I really have. We're being physical. Our pass blocking, we've gotten better understanding. Just the whole combination of things, the experience, and getting Eberle healthy, our center, and knowing how to – he makes the calls, but even more experienced, but he's healthy now inside. When you keep that inside push set and understanding how to pass off the twists and secure that inside gaps and things, I think it's very good. So from that standpoint, I've been pleased. I mean, we got to keep going, but we're where we need to be. But I'm very pleased with those two groups.
DeAndre was sacked 31 times, but I thought he held up well. I think it's going to help him this year. Didn't you?
He does. He's tough. He's competitive, man. I mean, if your quarterback's not tough and competitive, your team's not tough and competitive. He's got to set the bar, and he does that. He competes. He understands, and he had us on 4 or 5 game-winning drives at the end of the year last year, and guys know they get him the ball back, man. He can execute under pressure when the things happen, and just they love playing for him. They respect him, and his knowledge of the game is getting better. Receivers are getting better, getting where they need to be. He can get the ball out of his hands, make his reads quicker. We're protecting better. So I expect I just got a chance to have a really good year.
I talked to Cutcliffe a few weeks ago, too, and I put you guys in the same class. Doesn't take long to call roll on developing quarterbacks. Give me your take on what are you looking for when you're looking at a high school kid and different things, and then once he gets there, I know it's more than the footwork and the clock in your head and all those kind of things.
Well, I mean, I see. Here's the thing. I don't know if there's any one thing. Quarterbacking is a conglomerate of things that come together, and they all have either 3, 4, 5, or 6 things they do well. And you got to understand that. I mean, you got to have a certain level of arm talent you got to have. You get down to arm talent, processing information, what's the decision making, is he accurate with the ball when he throws it. But there's so many other intangibles. Some are quiet leaders, some are tough, some are there's a conglomerate of things to me that make up a quarterback. I don't think there's any one set thing. There's certain things you got to have, like I say, with arm talent and stuff.
Yeah.
But in hand talent, which I think no one talks about. That's where the accuracy comes from. It ain't arm talent. No one. I'm a big guy on hands and things like that. But you got to figure out what he is, and then you coach every one of them different, and you call the game different. And we've had to do that. But I think there's a conglomerate of things, and I think that's what makes a quarterback so interesting. You can lead and do things in so many different ways, and it's just a group of things, and you know it when you see it.
Jameis was so freaking good; it was crazy, but he was emotional. I know that frustrated you sometimes, but there's good to that too. What is DeAndre? What's his makeup?
Really, and I'll say this about James. I'm emotional. I like coaching emotion. I did not ever. I swear on that. Now I loved it because it was more to my personality. It really was of coaching Jameis. I mean, I loved coaching him in that way, and I love his emotion. But DeAndre's a quieter guy, a more stoic guy. But does a lot of things on the sideline, and he will in the huddle. Doesn't get as demonstrative, but at the same time, he gets his point across. And then, they know one thing: he's going to be tough. He'll stand there and take the bullets, and he'll make the plays when it has to.
You were so good at Salem and Sanford. Is it hard being a good quarterback coach when you were good? Are you more critical, you think, than the average guy that's just a coordinator?
I don't know if I'm more critical, but I am a very critiquing person as far as not just the nitpicky things, but how your mental approach is to the game, how focused you are, how detailed you are, how committed you are, how you're willing to do whatever you got to do to get the job done. I mean, and not having mental lapses. And one thing I cannot stand, and I will not tolerate, you touch the ball every play. Every time you touch it, it can change the game, good or bad. And sometimes your job is just manage the game. But you're the only guy in the world, you and the center, got the ball every play. You cannot ever have mental lapses and take that responsibility for granted and understand what your job is and responsibility is with that football.
Jimbo Fisher, our guest here for a couple of minutes. Before we wrap it up, tell me defensively, you're always good there. I think you're very underrated as a recruiter over there. I remember Eddie Goldman, all those guys. Tell me about your D.
Yep. I like our D. I mean, we got a lot of experience back. We got 10 starters back. Really, I think our inside guys, Naughty, Christmas, and got a lot of depth inside. Wally Aim, Fred Jones, all the young guys coming in, Marvin Wilson, Durden. I mean, there's a great group of the guys in there. The ends with Sweat, and Sweat had 7.5 sacks last year, but he is so physical, strong, can rush. Burns had 9.5 as a true freshman and 10 tackles for loss. Long, athletic. Wilkerson in there, the young guys, Kane Doe. I mean, all those guys I like. Our backers are athletic. We've got 3 seniors, Hoskins in the middle, and then Matthew Thomas and Jacob Pugh on the edges, who I think are going to play in the league a long time and are very athletic and long and big. Secondary, McFadden's an excellent corner. Derwin James, I think is one of the best players in all of the country, without doubt. Trey Marshall returning there. You got Levante Taylor, Kyle Myers, young Stanford Samuels, Carlos Becker in the secondary with Nate Andrews coming back from. I mean, it's a good group. You got a lot of guys that can create a lot of different matchups and scenarios with nickel packages, dime packages, extra linebackers, extra D linemen. I like where we're at there. I have a chance to be a good team anyway.
Absolutely. Matthew Thomas, redshirt seniors, missed some time. I'm not going to ask you when he's back, but do you think he'll play in the first game?
Yeah, without doubt.
Okay.
He should be back this week.
So he's in. Okay. How are you balancing the new recruiting window in December? Has it changed anything yet? This is the first time you're going around trying to figure this thing out while you're getting a team ready.
No, besides being stupid, they should be signing at the end of July and the 1st of August.
That's what I say. I'm glad you said that. That's what I say. I'm like, why is it not before the year like basketball and other spring sports where you can focus on it? If you're going to do it early, do it early. Don't do it 6 weeks early. What is that?
Dude, it's stupid, and it's just the way they didn't want to do it. And Nick always says, well, they sign or get like that, they won't want to play. Well, they're committed, they ain't going to play either. So what's the difference? There ain't no difference, and it takes a big load off your coaches. And it takes a huge load off your assistant coaches, and you find out who's really in and who's not in, and where you're going. But it'll change them. It's going to make it tough. People don't realize you're getting ready you got exams, you got bowl practice, you're going recruiting, and then you got a signing day in December when you're getting ready for one of these playoff games or a major bowl game. I mean, that's going to be a tough road to hoe right there now. You say, well, you had junior college signed up, but that's only 1 or 2 guys. You're talking about maybe 15, 20, 25 guys now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal. It's changing everything. I don't like it. I mean, at least we got something early. I think it's dumb what they've done. I think it should be at the beginning of, at the end of the summer and where you're at. But, that's here and there. But it will have to change, and we're going to have to really evaluate that. And then the big time is going to be when you're trying to bowl practice, recruit, and have a signing class while you're getting ready for a playoff game or a major game.
Yeah, I don't know what you're saving there. But you're just,
I don't either.
And the April visiting period's all screwed up now. I mean, it's all screwed up everywhere the whole year.
And then you're taking 3 months of visits. My Lord, I mean, assistant coach ain't gonna have no life. And if you know who you're visiting, that amount of time, even though a kid's committed in the fall, you're having to recruit him like he isn't. That can give those assistant coaches some break and let them coach and give them some family time. Because we're already taking 3 months away now in April, May, and June with official visits in the spring. So, I mean, tell me when you're going to have a family life or anything else.
Oh, my gosh. That's crazy. Speaking of family, I noticed Ethan, and this is Jimbo's son, who suffers from Fanconi, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, Fanconi anemia, correct?
It is. It is, yes.
And he cut his hair. What's that all about?
Yeah. Well, he actually what he grew his hair for, I'll tell you 2 stories with it.
Okay.
He grew it because Trey grew it. In 2013,
oh, that's right.
Our second Trey grew it, and he said, Dad, he's superstitious. Trey said, I ain't cutting it till we lose. We didn't lose for 2.5 years.
There may not be a finer quarterback coach than Jimbo Fisher in America. I love David Cutcliffe. I think he's outstanding. He and Jimbo, it wouldn't take long to call roll, as Bum Phillips would say, on who develops quarterbacks better. I know this about Jimbo Fisher. His last 3 have been first-round NFL draft picks. Now, they haven't done a lot. Jameis Winston certainly has. He's got a chance to be an MVP one year for the Tampa Bay Bucks. But E.J. Manuel, Christian Ponder, but, they were very, very high first-round draft picks. And you could say that DeAndre Francois will be the same kind of player for Florida State, a likely first-round draft pick. This is also a guy, if you remember, when he came to Samford, 34 touchdowns. His only year at Samford, again, transferring from Salem. 34 touchdowns. The Bulldogs went 9-1 with Terry Bowden as head coach. And in 1987, they averaged 51.7 points a game. They were throwing the ball all over the place. You want to talk about the spread? They were beyond the spread. Jimbo Fisher was the best quarterback in college football in the state that year, counting Alabama and Auburn. There's no question about it. Outstanding performance. And that's where that Bowden influence began as well, along with, obviously, Nick Saban when he joined him as the quarterback's coach and coordinator for LSU. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say Jimbo's got it figured out with Nick Saban or Nick Saban has it figured out with Jimbo. It's going to come down to players. Both will tell you that. Both know the other will be unbelievably detail-oriented. They'll have every T crossed and I dotted. They will leave nothing to chance, and it'll be between who has the better players and who's prepared them the most and responded to the head coach the best. But one thing's for sure, if Nick Saban is ever going to have any trouble with any assistants, and he hasn't had any in his career, I bet it begins and ends with Jimbo Fisher at some point before his career is done. For Bama fans, they hope it's not coming up here in just a matter of days at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's the latest game of the century. You remember Alabama-LSU a few years ago, right? Alabama lost that with 9-6 and then righted that ship, blanking LSU for the national championship. This is the latest one. Number 1 and number 3. The highest-rated matchup on an opening day in college football history. And what better way to have it than Nick Saban, arguably the greatest coach in college football history now, and a guy that might be more Nick Saban than Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, and all the others, Jimbo Fisher. We appreciate you listening to Tide and Tiger Podcast. Please share with your friends. Be sure you go to Griff Radio at podbean.com and look for the Tide and Tiger YouTube channel as well, and the website coming soon. I'm Scott Griffin for Tide and Tiger. Thanks for listening.